Hello, I'm here.
Hello, and hello to everybody else. Hello, and welcome to another live stream from the only source of information you need to not only survive the current apocalypse, but actually enjoy it. And this week, I really didn't do any writing at all. And not having done any writing, I really didn't feel up to going through all the stuff I have written in the past and trying to figure out something to read. So we're going to skip that, but that's okay because one of my listeners sent me a question in my email right before the show, so we're going to go ahead and respond to that. He wanted to be here in person to do it, but he's on the other side of the planet, and it's late at night where he is, so he's probably fast asleep right now. So anyways, Ala Toledo, you got my question for me?
Oh yes. And so I guess you were too lazy to prepare for the show. You didn't do your homework. Okay,
Almost didn't
so
get this thing turned on. I was looking
uh
at my watch, and I think, oh no, XSplit takes 5 minutes to light up, and I got 2 minutes left.
oh. Well, that's good. That's okay. That's okay. I think we need the respite from the daily scripture or the weekly scripture, right? So here's the question. The question is, in what ways did Eve become like a god? And how do you correctly define what is a god and what did the word God mean actually?
Yeah, this is a good question, and I think because it comes up so much in my videos, I always say that the problems we got now, and I don't care if it's government, religion, or whatever. When I'm trying to explain why things are so bad, I'll often say, well, back in the very beginning, Eve was offered an opportunity to be like a god, knowing good and bad, and she chose that, thinking that perhaps if she had those special powers, she could make this wonderful paradise she lived in even better than it was before. And so the scripture itself explains what a God is. It's one who knows good from bad. It says, you shall know good from bad just like the gods. And that, the God that we had, the true God, the God that had created Eve, gave her a list of rules. And the rules were, eat human food, don't eat animal food, get plenty of rest, sleep, experience pleasure, reproduce offspring, make sure that nothing bad happens to the forest so that the forest will ensure that nothing bad happens to you. And scripturally, those are all 100% accurate according to the original Hebrew word. So the way they get to us from the churches is a little bit different. But even in the original, or in the church form, the English translation form, when it says, dress and keep the forest, the basic idea is there that we were put here to follow instinctive natural laws in maintaining our planet as a paradise. So Eve chose to be a god. And at the end of this question, it asks, how do you really define a god, what a god is? And the word God in the Bible, there's actually two, because the Bible was written in two languages, actually three, but the word God isn't used in Babylonian or Chaldean language. But in the Old Testament, the word is El. Sometimes Elohim, There's many words that have that word El in it, and that El always means God. In the later portion of the Bible, the New Testament, when Jesus came onto the scene, people weren't speaking Hebrew anymore. They were speaking Greek, and the Greek word is Theos. So this is something that kind of lets us understand just what a God is, because in like many languages around the world, the definite article is El. In our language, in English, the definite article is the. So if we're in the woods and we tell somebody, meet me by the tree, you can't say that unless you already know that the person you're talking to understands which tree you're talking about. You can't say the tree when you're in a forest, because that doesn't really explain anything unless the person you're talking to knows which one of those many trees would be the tree. And in Spanish it would be el tree, el arboles, so the tree. And so the Hebrew word is El, which is like our definite article, and then the Greek word is theos, which is the same word that our word the is based on. So that's just so you understand that the center of attention for everything in the universe is always defined by the definite article. And in the language that of the Bible, either one of those, there's the word kairos in Greek, which is like boss, and the word Adonai, which is kind of like boss, or powerful one, mighty one. And God itself, in both instances, theos and el both mean mighty one or powerful one. And anytime you try to explain this to a person in a religion, they'll call you a heretic, because there's only God is God. It's not a powerful one. It is God. But that is not the case at all. The word God is that word el, the word theos. These are used to describe a lot of things that are not the Creator. And so by defining God as a powerful one or a mighty one, we're defining someone who has the right or ability to determine the difference between right and wrong. So you see, like people like us, we can determine that natural law is best and we can follow God's natural law. But if we do, we're not gods. We're being obedient to a God. So basically anything that you would do to be disobedient to natural law would make you a god in opposition to the God that's created natural law. So when Eve chose to know good and bad, or to be able to determine good and bad for herself, she could come up with rules that went against natural law. Because you remember, it's like one of the first things that happened after Eve entered into this covenant relationship with the serpent was that God came looking for her and her husband. And they were hiding. And so God said, well, why are you hiding? And Adam said, well, we were naked. And God said, well, who told you that you were naked? And the way the religions present this is that God was eventually going to get around to making a law against not wearing clothing, but he wanted to spring that on Adam and Eve himself. He wanted to be the guy that said, hey, guess what? I didn't tell you this, but you really need to wear clothes. That's not what happened. What happened in the story is what happened in the story. Eve introduced a new rule. Adam and Eve determined that instead of concerning themselves with God's natural law, they wanted to live by a law that required clothing. And so the way most English Bibles render God's response is that God gave them skins to wrap around themselves. And so that's why people say it's okay to kill animals, because from the very beginning God expected humans to kill animals to make clothes. But that's not what it actually says. In Hebrew it says that God covered their skin. It doesn't say he gave them skins. He covered their skins. And so that's the beginning of human beings being gods. Humans making decisions about what is right and wrong that are not related to God's natural law about what is right and what is wrong. So that's the definition of a god. A god is a mighty one. A mighty one would mean high up in the hierarchy. In the natural hierarchy, you have God, and then you have humans. And in an unnatural hierarchy, you have worthless humans who do the work, and then you have their bosses, their low-level managers, and you've got the people above that, and the people above that, and eventually you get to popes and kings and prime ministers and presidents that are at the top of Satan's hierarchy with no one above them except Satan. Do we have any time
Well,
left
it sounds
for
like
anything else?
I was gonna say, you said you didn't prepare, but I find it hard to believe you did that off the cuff.
Yeah.
Okay, time for hellos. So the top spot this week goes to Simple Sister Living. I think we need to give a prize out for the top spot sometimes. But she says, hi all. Next is Karen Bain, says, hi everyone. Kitch Cool is here. He says, hi guys. Pop Dart Dumb gives us a smile. Matt Wilcox reports that the sound is good. Angel Forrester says, hi everyone. Who Me says, whatever happened to the video on putting the egg back into the chicken? Chester Richardson says, hey everyone. Marie's Vegetable Garden says hello. Who Me makes a laugh at their joke and says hello. BMW guy says, greetings from Hungary. Hope all are well and just got settled in my new place. To which Matt Wilcox says to BMW guy says, they say Hungary is a good place to ride out the end times.
Well, that's apparently he's not the only one that believes that, because one guy actually moved to Hungary. So that's, No,
he's the guy.
Okay. Never mind. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he is the guy. So Super U68 says, hello, everyone. Grandma Patty says, good evening. Nuclear War, which is an interesting name. It's not nuclear, it's Nuclear War, says, good day. Marshmallow says, hello, everyone. KNFX 787 says, finally caught the live stream again. Good evening, Henry, and everyone else as well. Dale Rockwell says, hi, everyone. First question comes from Solid Gold. They ask, is there anything in the Bible that talks about modern preachers, because they say it's a quote unquote calling?
What's that now?
He's wanting to know about modern preachers and whether to become a preacher is a calling or not.
I've heard that all my life. When I was real little, and Father Abram Dono, you can Google him. He's still a priest working in the Indian nations now. He used to always talk about when he got his calling, because I was supposed to be a priest. I was an altar boy. I was really into it, and so he would always make sure I got sent to the, whenever they'd have whatever thing they do. You go off for 2 weeks and you stay at the seminary. I don't remember the retreats, and he would talk about the calling, when he got the calling and how he got the calling. And I always thought it was like magic. It's like, wow, I wish God would call me. But I don't doubt the man. The man said he got the calling and it was something significant. But if you keep in mind that all religions earthwide support Satanism, you got to wonder where the calling's coming from. Don't question whether or not the guy got called. Just question who did it, who did the calling.
Are you saying that the wrong God called him?
Yeah, and it may not be the wrong God for them. If you like civilization and you like determining what kind of clothes a person has to wear, like Eve, then you don't want to worship the God. You want a God that gives you a little bit more freedom, or what appears to be freedom. Satan says you can make those decisions, and every day people, make decisions, even on the lower level. We always think of the politicians and all the corrupt politicians as gods, and they're kind of like a scapegoat. You go down and vote for them, and they get in and they do bad things, and you act like you're surprised. But the whole deal is the way it works is, if you think that everybody who's part of one race or religion or nationality should be at the bottom of the totem pole, and your race, your nationality is at the top, then you're going to vote for a politician that's like you, because you're hopeful that he will inflict the same oppressive rules on mankind that you would inflict on mankind. The system of every human being actually being an independent God, that doesn't work. You can't have 7 billion people trying to be the God, because it doesn't have any effect. So you join what are called gangs, and on this planet we call them nations. So this gang is going to force their will on that gang. But even within the nations, you have two political parties, so you have to join one of those gangs, or you can be a kind of a rogue god and choose some third party just to make some kind of a political statement, because you're never actually going to get your guy into power. But that's what it is. That's what being a god. It's all part of being a god.
Few more hellos. First comes from Sandra Tirado. Says, caught you live. Yay. Hello from South Florida. And then Angel Forster says, hello from Four Corners, Florida. And then Uncle Nestor is here. He says, say uncle. And he went street. Yeah. And he went street preaching in New York this week, and he made $16.
Wow.
Not sure how you make money doing street preaching, though.
Look, if you really want to get into it, become a Jehovah's Witness. I did street preaching for a year, 15 years of it, door-to-door preaching, all that. It's an odd feeling, but I think that I think it would be good for everybody to just do that, to do it, just to get the experience. But it isn't really a requirement of the Bible, and it irritates people. And you got to kind of, I don't know. It's something that if you're curious about what it's like to just knock on some stranger's door and start telling them how to live, then the only way to know is to do it.
Well, speaking of Jehovah Witnesses, Karen Bain chimes in and says, I think by now you've figured out that I'm affiliated with the Witnesses. I realize they teach you need the faithful slave, that you need the faithful slave in order to inherit the kingdom. So what does our Creator require of us, really?
Well, there are some scriptures that the Jehovah's Witnesses use that I always can. I go along with whatever I'm in. When I was a Catholic, I went along with it. I didn't go around telling people, if you don't eat the sacred cookie, you're going to go to hell when you die. But I ate the cookie, and I hoped that it would help me. And I didn't have that strong faith in it because I had never had anyone prove to me that thing did something for me. But even when when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I believed in pretty much everything they said, and a lot of the stuff didn't really go with the Bible, but they had so much that they said that did go along with the Bible that when they told me something that didn't go along with the Bible, I bought into it. I didn't go around telling people. That's one of the things. I would be at a door with somebody, and we knock. Somebody comes to the door, and the person will ask a question that's kind of related to that. Well, in my heart, I would just say something like, well, I would try to say something innocuous. I wouldn't try to start a fight. But if it wasn't my turn, like you're always going to the door with two people, and you have a system where as you go to the door, if it's your turn, you talk, and the other person stays out of your business. If it's their turn, then they talk and you stay out of their business. And so it would always bother me when I would be at the door and the person with me would go into this stuff about, well, the 144,000 are in heaven and they're the ones that are judging us, and if we ignore them, then it's the same thing. And that kind of stuff is doctrinal. So I would always be really uncomfortable with that because there were so many things I could talk about that were absolute truths, about loving one another, not getting involved in politics, and to get off on a subject, one of those oddball deep subjects that you couldn't prove, it kind of bothered me. But here's what that's based on, or part of what it's based on, because there's really only one scripture that talks about a faithful and discreet slave, and the verse doesn't really take you anywhere special. But there was a prophet named Elijah, and right before the destruction of Jerusalem, he kind of took a stand in proclaiming that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. This was right before the Babylonian conquest, I think, and he got that reputation, and God blessed him. So he could do things that looked like magic, and he could tell people what was going to happen in the future, and it would come true. And after he died, a prophet named Joel came along, or no, I take it back. Right after Joel's Malachi. In the book of Malachi, it says that in the last days, or before the last days, Elijah the prophet would come. And so when Jesus appeared, people were asking him about Elijah the prophet coming before the last days, and Jesus said, well, I'm going to tell you something if you can listen to it, but this is probably going to confuse you. It's probably going to make you upset. John the Baptist is Elijah. And I've made a video about what in the world that could possibly mean. But the point is that we know that Elijah was here, and he proclaimed the destruction of Jerusalem, and then he died. And along comes John the Baptist, and he takes part in that. He tells people to get ready because Jerusalem is about to be destroyed again. And right before it's destroyed, Jesus is going to make an appearance. And sure enough, Jesus made an appearance. After Jesus died, Jerusalem was destroyed. So Elijah came, and then in some way, Elijah came again as John the Baptist. And like I said, I've made a video about this in Ala Toledo. Make a note. I want to put a link to that video when this is over. But then afterwards, the book of Malachi says that in the last days, Elijah would come. So the Jehovah's Witnesses teach that the 144,000, the faithful and discreet slave, the anointed, are the John class. The reason I never did like that, I was never comfortable with it, is that the Bible said specifically Elijah would come. Jesus said Elijah was John, and then it says Elijah would come again. So we've got this person coming again. Elijah was an individual. John was an individual. So according to the Bible, an individual would come before the last days. And that individual would explain the Bible and explain the destruction of civilization. It does not say that an Elijah class came before the destruction of Babylon, and it doesn't say that John the Baptist came, or a John the Baptist class came before the destruction of Jerusalem under the Roman Empire. And it does not say anywhere in the Bible that the John class would come right before Jesus returns. So that always bothered me. But just keep in mind that when you see something in Jehovah's Witness literature about the John class, there is nothing in the Bible to support that anywhere.
Synoptic Problem is asking, what's your main criticism of the Jehovah's Witnesses?
That they're religious.
Theologically.
Well, that's a pretty big one. I really never did like that 144,000 dead people were going to go to heaven, and then they were going to rule over us from heaven. There's no credibility to that. You know, you have to just have real good faith in the religion that they won't lie to you and just buy in 100% because there's nothing scripturally to support it. But yeah, that's a big one.
Okay, let's see. Next comes from another question from Synoptic Problem, and you briefly touched on it regarding end times, and there was an actual bunch of conversation and points that I'll read out that happened. First, Synoptic Problem asked, I've never understood what Henry means when he says, if you don't want to survive, don't listen to me. What does he mean by survive what? Which is followed by Pop-Tart Tom says, survive the end times. Like 2/3 of the population will theoretically perish, though they will be resurrected afterwards, and they would prefer they stick around to see what happens because they don't want to die. To which Synoptic Problem says, aren't we in the end times right now? And Angel Forrester says, I would say we're in the end times. And Synoptic Problem says, didn't the end times begin with Jesus' ministry? So over to you.
The end times began right immediately after Eve swallowed that piece of fruit, and the deal was done. That her and Satan determined that they were going to go ahead and make a gang to overthrow God's rules. Now, obviously, the next day, we were closer. We're more into the end times that went after Adam ate. And we were more into the end times after they were cast out, and then we were more into the end times after they had kids, and then the flood, of course. So we're always in the end times. Once it was determined that the best way of life was to just do things that went against natural law, the end was a sure thing. It's coming. But the Bible talks about the end times as being a 1,260-day cycle, and that's real. That's not figurative. It's not 1,260 years. It's not 1,260 months. It's going to be a literal 1,260 days. Now, if we go back and figure out the first time somebody said we're in the last days, more than that has passed. It's more than 1,260 days has passed. And in fact, we could say right now during this video that this is the last days, and 1,260 days from now, we can look back and decide whether or not we really were in the last days today by whether or not civilization is still here. So, what was the original question from Synoptic Problem? Or can you scroll back?
What is well, no, he's basically just asking, what is it? When you say, if you want to survive, if you don't want to survive, don't listen to me. Survive what?
Okay, here's the thing. All religions earthwide teach about some kind of heavenly reward, and I'm not just talking about Christendom or Judaism or Islam. Even the philosophies of long dead religions all speak of some kind of a heavenly reward, and that ends up in the Western world, Christianity, as going to hell or going to heaven. But you'll never find anything in the Bible about bad people going to hell or good people going to heaven. But you'll find things that say, well, this means everlasting life, taking in knowledge of you, the one true God, and the one whom you sent forth, Jesus Christ. And this means death, And so you've got this list of rules about what will get you killed and what will give you life. And the way that gets twisted is that the churches teach that it's talking about everlasting life in heaven. And death is speaking of everlasting life in hell. Well, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that God is holding out before us life and death so that we may choose life and live. When this all starts going down, and this is the way I perceive it from all of the verses that I've read from Genesis to Revelation, when this starts going down, there's going to be a time of tribulation. It's unlike anything that any human has ever experienced. It's going to be worse than the flood. And basically, what's going to happen is that this brand of patriot is going to take up arms against this brand, because these guys want to save the world from these idiots that are wrecking everything. These guys want to save the world from these idiots that are wrecking everything, because neither one of them is going to care two bits about what God wants or what God's got planned. And so even though it's not a guarantee, it's not a sure thing, listening to Sustenance and Covering will not save your life. But if you see these things start happening and you see the gangs forming for this war, it's best to let them keep one another busy. Don't form your own gang, and don't look at all the gangs that are out there and try to pick the best one to associate yourself with, because all of these Democrats and Republicans are going to kill each other. All these Christians and Muslims are going to kill each other. All of these, Chinese and Americans are going to kill each other. Don't be Chinese. Don't be American. Don't be Democratic. Don't be Republican. Don't be Catholic. Don't be any of these things that are considered teams. You don't want to be on a team in this war, because just like Jesus told Peter, those who live by the sword die by the sword. If we stay away from swords, we got a better chance of living. That's all it's about. It's not about good people going to heaven. It's about good people making wise decisions that keep you from being killed. Because in the book of John, it says that the apostles were sitting around and they said to John, well, is it true that John will never see death at all? John was right there. He's writing the book. And Jesus looked at him and he says, what is it to you? Are you John? So what difference does it make if John's going to live forever? You should worry about whether or not you're going to live forever. So the saying went around that John would never die. And so that's why there's this Christian belief that John wrote the book of Revelation when he was 98 years old and all the other apostles had already died. And that's all mythology. It's not real. But what is real is that at that same meeting, Jesus said, or maybe it was later, Paul said, that those of us who are alive when the last days begin will never taste death at all. So there's going to be a time when this world, the civilization, is done away with, and there will be survivors. And those survivors actually live forever without dying. Now, what if you're a Democrat or a Republican? What's going to happen to you? Well, you die, and then you're resurrected. So either way, you're going to get something good. But isn't it better if we just sit back and watch these things happening? Maybe together. Maybe we could all get together and watch this stuff. It's got to be better than getting killed in a war and then waking up knowing what a fool you were for joining one of those stupid teams.
Chester Richardson says we should form tribes. I think he was referring to something like ancient Israel tribes.
Families. Extended families. We're an extended family. That's what a tribe is. A tribe is an extended family. Pawpaw, Meemaw, maybe great-grandparents. Because that's God's right. That's what the government is, right? Honor your parents, honor your father and your mother. We form up into families. It's like the family is God's government. All the rest of this stuff is unrelated. It's not real. It's artificial, hierarchical, satanic system.
Couple more hellos. Little Magnolia Homestead says hi all. Great Bay 1961 says good evening all, and Rick Ballard says howdy everyone. Late again, sorry. Angel Forrester comes with the next question or statement. She says that I caught spirits in pictures, and I think it's guardian angels or family from the past.
Might be,
any
I don't know.
thoughts?
It could be. I mean, the Bible, here's the thing. If you join a church, they'll tell you right off, that's not a ghost. Ghost ain't real. Dead people are in hell or heaven or something like that. It's not an angel because angels don't appear now. They appear to people like Jesus, but that's done away with. But I'm not that guy, I'm a guy that says that if people in the past saw, well, like the Witch of Endor and King Saul thought he was in trouble. He was in serious trouble, and he thought maybe if he called on Samuel, Samuel would put in a good word for him, and he could get out of trouble. And so the Witch of Endor spoke, and Samuel came up. Said Samuel came out of the ground, and so she screamed. And Saul says, "Well, what is it? What do you see?" And he says, "Well, it's a man, and he's wearing a official garment of a prophet." And Saul goes, "It's him. It's Samuel. You see Samuel. So ask him what's going to happen." He said, "I'm in trouble, and it looks like I'm going to die." And so Samuel the prophet says, "Well, you are going to die. And by the way, why did you wake me up?" So I don't think, this is the way the churches will. First off, if you ask them about it, they won't say anything, or they'll say, "Oh well, it was an angel, or it was a demon pretending to be Samuel," or some silly stuff like that. In fact, I think the only religion I've ever been involved in that addressed this scripture was Jehovah's Witnesses, and that was their explanation. It couldn't have been Samuel. It must have been a wicked spirit that was tricking Saul. But I think that that's pretty important information, and if that's the case, it would be somewhere in the Bible. But it doesn't. The Bible very clearly says that this spirit really was Samuel. Now, whether or not anything's changed, I don't know, but a whole bunch of people see stuff that would only be a ghost or an angel, and who am I to tell them they haven't seen that, Because I've seen some really strange things myself in my life that I don't go around bragging about because I don't want to lose my credibility, And not only that, but I don't even know some of the things that I have seen or experienced. I can't tell you for a fact what they were, It's like if you say you saw something and you believe it was an angel or a dead family member, that's a good way to put that, because the important part is that you saw something.
Okay, next question comes from Marshmallow. They want to know, does the covenant agreement have anything to do with a marriage license?
All covenants are, it's a marriage. You think about it. Human beings were never meant to be paired together for all eternity. God wouldn't have made billions of people and then said, okay, you have to be with this one person for eternity. That's irrational. And there's nothing in the Bible to support that. And so basically, Eve's mate was Adam. When she entered into the covenant with Satan, that was a legal agreement. And in fact, that's the way it's always presented throughout the Bible. And it's kind of weird. Like when Abraham went into the promised land, he brought his sister with him. And when he got in there, he ended up making a covenant with someone else. Now, we're told that Sarah was Abraham's wife, and this other woman was his concubine. And that's all the way through the Bible. You have wives and you have concubines. But then when you get to the New Testament, and they're talking about some of these relationships, it's always flipped around. But because the word we translate as concubine actually means legally bound sex partner. So that's what a wife is. And so in Greek, there's no way around that. You know, the people who are translating the Greek know that they pretty much are stuck. They have to admit that Sarah was not Abraham's wife because Hagar, the woman that he had a baby by, was by a legal agreement. That was someone else's spouse or marriage or mate, but it was Abraham's legal sex partner by agreement. By agreement, and a covenant is getting a driver's license, getting a deed, property deed. That's a covenant. Any kind of a legal agreement that you enter into is a covenant, and a lot of this stuff is forced upon us, like our birth certificates. But basically, even marriages are forced upon us. You know, if we fall in love with someone and we want to express that love, we have an option. Of course, things are getting a little easier, but we have an option of being shunned by society or by going to the government and asking for permission to have sex with this person. But yeah, it's all a covenant and it's all evil. Every bit of it's evil. No human will ever, after the resurrection, there will be no legally binding agreements between anybody. All humans will be on this level of the hierarchy. God will be here. And the only hierarchy that it will exist between humans is honor your father and your mother.
Next question comes from Uncle Nesta. He says, do you have any thoughts on CBD oil? It helps with my diabetic nerve pain. And I'm not sure if you know what CBD oil is.
I'm not really sure. Is CBD oil, knowing this is coming from Nesta, I'm guessing it's something to do with hemp. Is it hemp?
Yeah. It's cannabis bediol or something like that oil. So they use it for everything, I guess.
I saw a video like on Facebook. I'm on Facebook now. I'm not on Facebook to talk to people. There's like all these groups for buying and selling bus parts. I'm trying to get my bus back together, so I've joined a bunch of bus groups. And so don't ask me to be on my Facebook page because now you can be on SustenanceNCovering Facebook page, and if you have some bus tires, you could call me personally, or you can send me a message. But anyway, on Facebook, they had something pop up. It was an ad, and it was these people taking these drops and putting them on their tongue, and they were talking about how it actually cured their diabetes, not just the neuropathy, but the diabetes itself. And in the first 2 or 3 episodes, I saw and I didn't have the sound turned up because I'm looking at other stuff, but these people are putting these drops on their tongues, and one of them was Tommy Chong. And I said, I bet I know what those drops are. But and then, well, the same thing came up today, and I thought, well, this time I'm going to listen to it because I'm kind of curious about what this is. And sure enough, they were talking about curing diabetes with these drops. But guess what? Tommy Chong wasn't on them. The only thing I can figure is Tommy's already been to jail. He's had enough trouble from from lawyers messing with him, and he was the only celebrity in that group. If they were to determine that people are not getting cured of diabetes, then they could take Tommy Chong to jail again, or they could sue him. And so he's not in the ads now. That's the only thing I figure. I'm not saying it doesn't work or it does work, but I've seen it. I know that that's there, and I don't believe. Look, diabetes is a progressive disease. Since I've gotten it, I have been doing everything I can to mitigate it, and so far, all I've found that works is just doing what the doctor tells me.
Let's see. Grandma Patty says the CBD is extracted from marijuana that is a hybrid that is lower in content with in the THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana.
Oh yeah, a friend of mine was telling me. It's like he gives it to his patients. He's a healer, and he says first off, it's more expensive than weed, because it's like a concentrated thing, and it's the oil, which does not have the effects of inhaling the hot fumes of it, and so it's so expensive that if you wanted to get high off of it, it would probably cost you like $1 million, and it would probably make you vomit before you could get enough of it in you. From what I understand, I'm not a weed guy. I don't even like taking aspirins. So.
Well, Uncle Nesta says that it cured his nerve pain, so I guess that's a thumbs up from him.
I actually had neuropathy, and I was told it couldn't be cured. But when I got my sugar down low, after about a year of having my sugar low, the pain went away. But as of late, I've had a few spikes, and whenever my sugar spikes, I actually I don't need this little machine over here to tell me, because my legs will start tingling and my feet will hurt, and so I know that depending on who you are, that you can, get rid of neuropathy. Whether it's a pill that gets rid of it, or exercise, or some people use other methods to get rid of it. I know it can be treated. So if you're taking this oil and it's clearing up your neuropathy pain, I'm glad for you, and I believe you.
BMW guy over there in Hungary says CBD helps his neuropathy. It's non-diabetic though, and he was chiming in that it's derived from the hemp and cannabis. And then Way to Go To says they're new here, and they also have type 2 diabetes. And then Wizard of Raw says doctors will never help diabetes.
No, they can't. That's the truth. Well, they can help it, because here's the thing. Diabetes, if you're diabetic and you don't work with it, you will go blind. They will cut your feet off. They will, you will end in your death. You'll end up on dialysis. But at the same time, there's a lot more to it than just that. I've never seen a diabetic lose their feet unless they were a diabetic that smoked. It seems like the two have to go together, and I've actually read information about that, saying that if you're smoking anything and you're diabetic, you're going to lose your feet eventually. What doctors can do is they can help you to keep your blood sugar down by dieting with, metformin or glucophage. When you're a type 2 diabetic and you start taking insulin, you're in some serious trouble, because insulin is not supposed to help type 2 diabetics. So when you get that bad off, you need to start taking some extreme measures. And I don't even know what those are going to be, but I'm headed that way, because I've been on controlling my diabetes with diet. And, I take a lot of natural things that may or may not be helping me, like cinnamon, turmeric, whatever that other, alpha lipoic acid, and there's a lot of natural remedies you can take. But I also take the prescription medications that they give me. One is for my heart, and one is for the blood sugar itself. And you're right. They can't cure it, but I think that, if the choice I have is to go blind and lose my feet, or take a pill, I'm going to take a pill, because I've had people that, the raw food. I'm thinking you're eating a vegan diet, raw items, and I think that probably if I could do that it would significantly reduce my symptoms and my sugar, and it would get me, maybe 10 years further down the road. But it ain't going to cure you. I don't believe that would cure you, because I know of people that have had diabetes who are vegans, and they still had diabetes.
Yeah, I think that's where the user's name comes from. Wizard of Raw is saying that fixing diabetes is simple: raw foods, no animal products. And then they say they cured their diabetes with fruits, green juices, herbs, no cooked foods. So.
Well, I do know this, that one of the things my doctor says is don't eat fruit. Don't eat oranges. Don't eat any kind of fruit that's high in sugar. I've also been told that if I do eat fruit, I can eat apples. Bananas are way off the list. You can, and I find that when I eat a lot of fruit anyway, and when I eat fruit, my sugar goes down. So obviously, everybody is not the same, or doctors are feeding us a lot of stuff that is obviously wrong, because I do believe that when you eat a more natural diet, that your body reacts well to it. But at the same time, if I ate an orange and my blood sugar went up, I wouldn't go around telling people to switch to a fruit diet.
Pop Dart Dump says they're trying to heal an autoimmune condition in a similar way. And then Grandma Patty says she's following Dr. John McDougall, MD, on YouTube and his diabetic recommendations. Let's see.
I'll say this: if you are like a lot of people believe that weed will cure everything. And here's the thing with me. I've tried weed when I was 50 years old, and I didn't like it and couldn't smoke it. And if there were health benefits, I didn't do it long enough or whatever to see what those benefits are. But if you can smoke it and you're not worried about getting in trouble, try it. And if you can get the oil and take the oil, try it. And if you can afford to eat nothing but raw fruits and vegetables, try it. Don't believe me and don't believe Wizard of Raw. Don't believe this doctor. Just try it. And if you get good results from it, then you've benefited yourself. There's no reason to, make a blanket statement. You got diabetes, well, start the timer. You're going to die.
Then Wizard of Raw chimes in again and says not vegan necessarily, but raw foods in general. And then Pop Dart Dumb says vegan isn't necessarily raw, but there are such things as raw vegans.
So I just yes, simple yes or no. You can type it in, eventually get to me. Do you actually eat cows without cooking them? I mean,
I was thinking that too. So that's what they're saying.
I mean, do you eat the whole cow or? Okay, I'm not making fun of you, but I mean, honestly, I can't imagine a raw diet including meat. I've eaten raw meat, it doesn't really bother me, but I like my meat cooked a little bit. Even my sushi. Could you put that in the microwave for a minute, sir?
Let's see. Next question, or actually, this is going back to the idea of taking pictures and seeing ghosts or family members or angels. Synoptic Problem wants to know what your thoughts are about Chiarlini photography and auras. I guess, you can see auras in pictures. And is there any thoughts about cleaning your chakras and the Kundalini or
Yeah, I don't know any of them fancy words, but I know like in 1890 or something when somebody figured out that they could double expose a picture. So they'd go out and take some pictures, right, of people wearing angel costumes. And then they would take the camera and instead of fast forwarding the film, right, to the next picture, they would go ahead and re-expose that same one. Because, back in the day, you would have to expose a piece of film for like a minute. And, they had these racks. When people went and got their photograph taken, they would put this thing on their neck to keep them from moving. They'd stand there for a minute. So they'd stand there for 30 seconds. Then they'd go out in the yard and stand there dressed like angels for 30 seconds. And you'd end up with angels floating around people. And so it was a big scam. People were going crazy over it. They were taking photographs they were going in haunted houses with cameras and trying to catch pictures of angels and ghosts and stuff. And I know that happened, but it was exposed as a fraud. It doesn't mean that no angel or dead person has ever been caught on camera. I see stuff all the time that very obviously is angels and demons, but at the same time, we live in the 21st century. It's not real difficult to fake something like that. So I don't put my faith in it.
Wizard of Raw comes back and says that they don't eat any animal products at all. So the animal protein is why you have diabetes. And then Grandma Patty chimes in that no animal products for her either.
I'm going to tell you something about my diet right now, and I've been trying my best to eat really, really healthy. And when you're poor, there's a lot of resources available to you as far as food goes. You got your EBT, which is a card that allows you to purchase whatever you want, but it's like $30. If you get just one organic banana, it's like there's your whole card gone. So obviously, when I take my card down, I'll buy the cheapest bulk items I can get. And when I go to the food bank, they give you a box of food. And I've asked them several times, is there any kind of, and that's run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And stuff they give you is it's like TV dinners in a can. It's not healthy. It's like a lot of carbohydrates and protein and fat. And it's things that you really shouldn't eat anyway. But if you're diabetic, you really shouldn't eat them. And they have no options. And so since I've started really taking charge of my sugar, that stuff has been stacking up, and I've got a reputation for being a prepper because I like having a lot of food, but I'm getting so much food here that I have no room in any of my cabinets for all this stuff, and so I'm starting to eat it. And a lot of that is I was getting deeper and deeper and deeper into into poverty, because the government doesn't give me anything for my health except pills. I'm in the VA system, so I can go down there, and if my sugar's too messed up, they'll inject me with something, and that's free. But if I go to the VA and say, could you give me a food allotment, or could you have some fresh lettuce sent to my house, they're going to laugh at me. And basically, that's the only thing I really buy now. I get everything from the food bank. I buy my bulk items, but once or twice a month, I'll go down and I'll buy lettuce, tomatoes, celery, bell peppers, onions. Try to get as many bulky vegetable type things as possible to introduce in my diet. And I haven't seen a really significant increase in my sugar, so I'm thinking that I can do this. And it's really the only way. I couldn't go online and beg for money to build an RV. That basically that's what I'm doing now. So all the money I'm saving, I'm getting tires put on my bus, and I'm getting batteries put on the bus, and I'm going to get a couple of hospital beds in the bus, and I'm so there's not anything anybody's going to tell me is going to make me go to eating a raw vegan meat diet, because then I go back to not having electricity and not having a telephone. So
Pop Tart Dome says, I'd like it if you would talk a little bit about the book of Isaiah. That's what they're reading right now.
Oh, I can't. I have no memories of what's in Isaiah. I mean, if I were to pick it up and start reading it, I'd be, oh yeah, I've read this. I've read it 9 times or 8 times. How many times I've read the Bible? I think 8, maybe 9. I can't remember if I got all the way to Isaiah last time I attempted to read the Bible. But yeah, I'm not good for verse, chapter and verse quotes. I know it's in the Bible, but I don't know exactly where it's at.
Next question comes from Kitch Cool. He wants to know what would be your views on contacting the dead? And just going off of some of the things you said earlier, the Jehovah's Witnesses clearly say stay away from people that can contact the dead. And it clearly says that they are unconscious of nothing. So for anyone listening or something, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ecclesiastes. Now I said I don't know chapter and verse, but I think it's cool, and I both spend a lot of time with the same organization, and I think it's Ecclesiastes 9:5 and 10, or 9:12, somewhere chapter 9 of Ecclesiastes. It says, "As for the living know that they're alive. But as for the dead don't know anything at all." But Ecclesiastes, like Proverbs, was written by Solomon. And that whole thing starts off by saying, like here's something about the book of Isaiah, the book of Ezekiel. All of those books start off saying, in the 3rd year of something, the Spirit of the Lord came upon me, and the Word of God came to me. And so that's the way a lot of books of the Bible start. The book of Proverbs starts off, here are the perverted sayings of Solomon. And it really does say that. It says this is the wisdom of Solomon, or here are the Proverbs of Solomon. But that word Proverbs, or proverbial saying, the word wisdom, is always associated with the wisdom of Egypt, the wisdom of Babylon, the wisdom of Rome. Those are bad things. And so if you look at what the original Hebrew word was there, it isn't a good word. It can be used, like wisdom. You can be wise in that you don't expose yourself to danger, but most of what wisdom is worldly human wisdom. And so you have to take that into consideration when you're looking at the verse that the dead cannot communicate with us. But then you also have to take in verses that say anyone who is, and this is in Deuteronomy, anyone who is caught contacting the dead is to be killed. And but then if you're looking at Deuteronomy, you have to go and look at the New Testament where it says Jesus did away with the law, because that verse in Deuteronomy is very obviously is part of that law, the law that Jesus did away with. So I wouldn't tell somebody to not contact the dead, but I wouldn't tell them to do it either. And here's my own take on that. My dad was alive for the first 45 years of my life, and I spent a lot of time with him. And we would do as much together as we could, especially as he got really old. You know, I knew time was coming, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't have any regrets. So at least once, sometime twice a week, I'd go pick him up and take him. We'd go somewhere together. And in that time, that 45 years, I never once had a dream about my dad. Never once. I never ever dreamed about my dad. And when he died, I was ready. It was shocking to see him there dead. And you know, I mean, I never ever had dreamed about my daddy ever. But after he died, I started having dreams about him. And I wouldn't even be thinking about him. You know, in my mind, I was past that pretty quick. You know, my dad is dead. I knew he was going to be dead. I did everything I could. I'm happy with the way things worked out. But now it's like at least once a week, I dream about him. And it was only recently that I actually heard him speaking, because in my dreams, I would be dreaming that I'm driving down the road, and I'm looking to make sure that there's nothing coming from this way, and I'll turn and look, and I'll see my dad sitting there next to me in the car, or he's in the back. And so I always kind of wonder if my dad is somehow contacting me in my sleep, because it just doesn't make sense to me that I would spend 45 years never dreaming about my dad, and then all of a sudden I dream about him all the time. And they're insignificant dreams, you know. It's like he doesn't even serve any purpose in these dreams other than the fact that he's there. So, you know, this is one of those things where I can tell you what I dreamed. I can't tell you what it means. Is it a demon? I don't know. Is it my dad? I don't know. Is it just some goofy dream? Who knows, you know, because sometimes I dream I can fly. And, you know, I don't have any aspirations for flying. I don't remember ever flying before in real life. I don't believe people start flying after they die. You know, it's just a silly thing to dream. But who knows what that means? You know, we're all being manipulated by wicked spirit forces, righteous spirit forces. You know, and Jesus was talking to people that were really bad. The Bible says they were demon possessed. You know, what's a demon? It's a bad angel. So if a demon, the only thing making a demon different than an angel is that they're bad, then good angels should be able to do the same thing as bad angels, right? And if Samuel could come out of the grave, then why shouldn't anybody else be able to come out of the grave? You know, I don't know. I haven't got the answers for everything, but I can tell you that's in the Bible.
Okay, I think the last question is going to be, depending on how long your opinions go on this, is a number of people have commented about Trump and the Israel-Jerusalem thing. So first, Eric Hill came in and said, how do you feel about Trump going to move the embassy to Jerusalem and naming it the capital of Israel? And Pop Dart says, oh yeah, I'm curious about that too. Why does Trump have any authority on Israel? And then Great Bay 1961 says, is Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel the beginning of the Gog and Magog war? And Synoptic Problem says, do you think there's any end times implication of Trump recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital? And then you can go ahead and take us out after this.
Well, I'm going to say this, that's not a new thing at all. You know, the Egyptians tried to get into Jerusalem, and they made big plans about it, big talk, and they couldn't get in. And then later the Assyrians said they were going to go into Jerusalem, and they tried, but they didn't. They got the 10 northern tribes and they carted them off into slavery, but they couldn't get the last 2. And then, so I guess after that, the Babylonians went in. Well, first the Egyptians went back in again, then the Babylonians went in, and they were able to conquer Jerusalem. And in fact, there's a lot of verses about how that was incredible that Babylon actually pulled it off. And so this has been going on forever. You know, that's what the Crusades were. The Crusades were the British Empire's attempts at conquering Jerusalem, the Roman attempts at conquering Jerusalem. So Satan's empire has always been trying to get into Jerusalem. And I've always felt like it would be really significant if that happens, because we've got all these people trying, and it's just a little chunk of land in the middle of the desert. Seems like it'd be pretty easy. You just go in there, tell everybody get out or we'll kill you, and then you put a flag up somewhere. So I don't know that it's significant, any more significant that Trump's trying to do it than it was when Herod did it, or when Alexander the Great did it, or when Artaxerxes did it, or Nebuchadnezzar did it. But the fact is, it's weird. It's weird that the entire history of humanity has been about capturing a dead piece of rock in the middle of the desert. And there are a lot of verses that talk about a temple being built there again, another satanic temple, just like the other 3 satanic temples. And if this actually happens, then that makes it stand out from some of the other attempts. And is that going to be significant for the end of the world? I think it is. I mean, you're asking me my opinion, and my opinion is that someone sent me a video a year or 2 ago of Trump in front of a whole bunch of Jews. I don't know if he was in Israel or somewhere in the States, but he was saying, day one, if I'm elected president, day one, the first and most significant priority of my presidency will be the retaking of Jerusalem, the establishing of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, putting the American embassy in Jerusalem. And I thought, even back then when he was saying that, this guy is never going to be president unless it's the end of the world, because there is no way in the world. We've already stirred up the nation of Islam, the actual world of Islam enough. That would be definitely putting things over the edge. And there's no real reason for it at all. It's just ridiculous. It's evil. And if they pull it off, that means they got something else up their sleeve. Because right now, currently, earth-wide, the single most powerful Orthodox Jew on the planet is his son-in-law. So, we could be heading for fulfillment of Antichrist prophecies. Oh well, as I said in the beginning, the only channel you need to not only survive the current apocalypse, but actually enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed it tonight. And as I always try to end these by saying, if you don't want to survive, don't listen to me. Well, we're going to go ahead and do that now. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.